Have you ever felt like you're in over your head? You may be sitting there and even laughing about the thought of that because some of us feel like we're always in a perpetual state of being in over our head. There's just a lot of things that go on. And if we think about that statement, even being in over your head, what does that mean? To me, it kind of comes across as a picture of someone swimming. Maybe it comes to my mind this way because as a child, I wasn't a very good swimmer at all. And when I think about being in over my head, I think about a time or two that I jumped in the pool because I was trying to be brave or stupid. And I jumped in, I remember fighting just to keep my head above water. And what I felt was the water's continuing to rise above my head as I fought and sloshed around. And all of a sudden, I noticed that I'm under the water and I can't help myself to get up over the water and get my head above the water.
In life, often we can have all kinds of things rising up against us, all sorts of pressures and stresses. Our finances, our work, our distractions that rise up against us, and we feel like we're going to be completely overwhelmed. Our schedules are booked and double booked, and we can feel like we're way in over our heads. In many ways we are. But how many of us are going to be okay with staying that way? Don't we want something better?
It calls to mind another story we see in the Bible. I think of Peter. Peter's a guy that's pretty outspoken. He kind of shot his mouth off quite a bit. But there's an instance in the Bible when they're out in the boat with some of the other disciples, and Jesus isn't with them. And the wind's starting to kick up a little bit. It's starting to get pretty stormy. And he looks out, and the other disciples look out, and they see something out in the water, and they come to realize that it's Jesus, and he's walking on the water. And Peter he thinks that's a pretty good idea, and he'd like to be out there with Christ, and Christ in so many words tells him, "Come on out, Peter." And Peter, as he's walking out of the boat, as he steps out of the boat and onto the water, he keeps his eyes focused on Christ, and as he keeps his eyes focused on Christ, he's able to walk on the water. He does just fine. But like I said, the wind is starting to kick up a little bit, and there's waves starting to crash down, and apparently there was some sort of wave that's coming up near him, and he took his eyes off Jesus and looked off to the side, and what happens is he starts to sink in the water. All of a sudden, those things that are around him begin to rise up, and he gets in over his head. And Christ comes over and grabs him and pulls him up, and it's the idea of him having little faith. It's the idea that he doesn't have faith that Christ can overcome the obstacles that are around him. So for us, oftentimes we have many things that speak in our life and can cause us to lose our focus on Christ, can cause us to take our eyes off Christ. And maybe in our life we don't even have our eyes on Christ, but we're looking all around at the things that are all around us, the stresses and frustrations.
I think we have to ask ourselves, am I at a place where I am desperate enough to stop trying to figure out how to keep my head above water myself and cry out to God for help?
So you may be asking, what are you suggesting, Adam? Well, here's what I've found. I've found that Christ has spoken hope into the darkest of all situations. In times that I can't help myself, he has helped me. And so I suggest to all of us that we would turn our eyes to him. He's the one that can bring light in the midst of the darkest situations. He's the one that can speak into death, and there is life. And so why would we look to any other source in the midst of our trials? When we feel like we're in over our head, who else should we turn to? When Peter was sinking and he was in over his head, he turned to Christ. And that's my suggestion today.
So today, as the things of this world rush in like water, washing over and engulfing us, may we remember to turn our desperation for change to Christ. May he be our focus, our hope, and our salvation.